Hello everyone, welcome to Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services. It's a video on daily news and editorial analysis, which I'll be covering from the Hindu and Indian Express. The most important news and editorial of the day, that is relevant for both prelims and mains examination perspective of civil services, will be discussed in this session. Let's get started with the news topic list. Today is 8th of November. The first important news, Supreme Court uphold the EWS quota. We'll see the detail about the judgment that is coming from the Supreme Court with regards to EWS and 103 amendment. Second, the Black Sea Grain Initiative. This is from the text and context page of the Hindu. Third, Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council called for a single GST rate, which should be uniform across the country. We'll see the detail about this as well. Fourth, early warning system for the entire world, which is their initiative that will be taken by World Meteorological Organization. And the last is an editorial India G20 presidency and the food security. Apart from the news and editorial discussion, at the end of this video, there will be MCQ based question. These questions will be based on current affairs that will help you for the upcoming prelims examination. So without any further delay, let's get started. And before I begin this session, those of you who are new to our channel, do not forget to subscribe Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services on YouTube. If you like this video, if you find this video informative and helpful, do press a like button. Starting the session with the first news, that is Supreme Court uphold EWS quota, something important for General Studies Paper 2, under the subtopic Structure, Organization and Functioning of Executive and Judiciary. A landmark opinion coming from the Supreme Court with regards to the EWS quota. Recently, the Supreme Court of India has upheld the 10% reservation for the economical and weaker section, so known as EWS. तो जो EWS की कोटा थी 10% की, specifically in the government job and educational institution, has been upheld by the Supreme Court, right? So just to remind you, this reservation of 10% is only for the government job, that is for the government job, and for the educational institution, and not for any panchayat or any elections, right? So UPSC can ask you a question that the reservation will extend to what? It will only extend to government job and educational institution. The Supreme Court held that 103 amendment to the Constitution, this was an amendment which was made, cannot be said to be the breach of basic structure of the Constitution, permitting the state to make special provision in relations to admissions to private unaided educational institutions. So this judgment, there was a 5-bench constitutional bench of the Supreme Court, जिसमें तीन judges ने favor की और 2 judges ने dissent की. So this was basically a split verdict which was there from the Supreme Court, where 2 judges actually split from the verdict and 3 judges had favored it. The splitting judge also include the Chief Justice of India, Mr. U. Lalit, जो जस्ट हैं, उनके dissenting में उस 2 में ये भी शामिल है. So right, but the majority of 3 will prevail, and this is what which has upheld the validity of 103 Constitutional Amendment Act. Now, observations जो Supreme Court ने दी इस regard में, so this is something going to be very important for the mains as such. Mains के लिए काफ़ी ज़्यादा relevant हैं ये points, and even UPSC can directly ask you a question in the prelims as well. So what the court said, the apex court has noted that the EWS quota did not violate the equality code of the Constitution and basic structure of the Indian Constitution. This is what the 5-judge bench में जो 3 bench जो judges हैं उन्होंने ये बातें कही हैं, right? And on the issues of exceeding the 50% reservation ceiling, majority said that it would not apply to the EWS quota reservation. Just to tell you, जो इंदिरा सवानी की cases थी, उसमें कैपिंग रखी गई है 50% की, उसके ऊपर बात नहीं की गई है रिजर्वेशन देने के बाद. What the government has said, and even through this reservation, the observation that was made by the Supreme Court has said that this is a different aspect, that it cannot be related with that. Now, there are 40 petitions that have challenged 103 Constitutional Amendment Act in 2019, which introduced 10% reservation for the EWS in public employment and educational institution, and over the above 50% reservation for ST, SC and OBC. The center has deferred the EWS quota, asserting that it does not violate the basic structure of Indian Constitution. There's a lot of debate. The other section, another stakeholder are saying that this is a violation. The other 2 judges, which include the CGI, has said that this amendment is a violation of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. But the three judges has given their assent and they said that this is not the violation. But as per the rules and regulation of the Supreme Court, majority की जो judgment होती है, जो rulings होती है, वो prevail करती हैं. Now about the EWS quota, अगर economically weaker section quota की बात करें, the government has brought EWS quota in 2019 to provide reservations in the government jobs and higher education to economic and weaker section of the society. They can belong to any category, right? Apart from the exemption that is already provided to ST, SC and OBC, right? ये इसमें included नहीं होंगे, ये कहना था इस reservation policy की. So this is a different category of reservation that was created. Now this 10% of reservation applied to those not covered under the existing scheme of 50% of reservation. जो मैंने आपको पहले बताई, जो SC और ST और social economic backward classes को जो reservation मिल रही हैं, उनसे बाहर ambit ये 10% वैसे लोगों को दी जाएगी जो कि जनरल कैटेगरी से आते हैं and they are not getting reservation. The Constitution 103 Amendment Act 2019 passed by the Parliament enabled both the central government as well as the state government to provide reservation to EWS, right? Now, Constitution की 103 Amendment Act क्या है? This is again going to be relevant for the prelims examination as such, and even you can expect an analysis question in the mains examination also. So it introduced the economically reservation by amending Article 15 and Article 16 of Indian Constitution. दो आर्टिकल इंसर्ट की गई थी, Article 15(6) subclause 6 और 16 के subclause 6 in the Indian Constitution, which allow reservation for the economic backward in the unreserved category. So it was enacted to promote the welfare for the poor, which is not covered in the 50% reservation, right? जो मैंने आपको बताया SEBC, SC और STs के अलावा. It enabled both the center and state to provide reservations to EWS of the society. And since the center law is a state subject and the employment and education is on the concurrent list, both the state government and the central government have the jurisdiction. So this is again relevant for prelims examination. And the state government need to rectify before it adopted locally. So this is the constitutional provision before adopting any changes. Now a case study, just to give you a brief idea how does it emerged and what is a case study in this regard. The chronology of the event with the Supreme Court judgment where 10% reservations with the people belonging to economically and weaker section in the government jobs and admissions are concerned. So January 8, 2019 को लोकसभा ने 103 Constitutional Amendment Bill pass किए. Rajya Sabha also cleared this bill and the Ministry of Law and Justice issues notice saying that the President Ram Nath Kovind has given the assent to this bill. Now this was challenged in Supreme Court in February, and in 6th the Supreme Court noticed to the government on pleas challenging the amendment, declined to stay the 10% quotas, right? Supreme Court ने decline किया था. Benches Constitution to hear the appeal और September में Supreme Court ने hearing start की और 27 September को इस order को reserve रखा. Now finally on 7th of November, that is yesterday, the Supreme Court by majority of 3-2 judgment where 2 judges dissented and that has upheld the validity of 103 constitutional amendment providing 10% reservations to EWS quota in admission and government jobs. Very important. I think you have understand this topic comprehensively. If any question either in mains or in prelims arises, you will be easily able to answer that. Now moving to the other news, the Black Sea Grain Initiative, something important for General Studies Paper 2, that is bilateral regional grouping and agreement involving India and affecting India's interest. So recently, Russia has suspended parts of the deal that allow Ukraine SEP to pass from the Black Sea port, basically, safely amid the month-long war which is ongoing between Russia and Ukraine. उसकी वजह से जो supply chain में उसमें globally disruptions देखी गई. Now, Ukraine said that the urchin of SIP has sailed despite initially reporting that more than 200 vessels may be loaded to travel and they were stuck in Russia's after the announcement which was made recently. Ukraine and Russia are the key suppliers of wheat, barley, sunflower and other food to countries like Africa, Middle East, Asia, where India is also a substantial beneficiaries, right? And they're already struggling with hunger. And this has also led to the higher inflation in our country. And the point is that why Russia is withdrawing, because they wanted that they don't want Ukraine to give a sympathy kind of thing, which is essentially would not be the part of support that is required for many other countries. Now, Black Sea Grain Initiative की बात करें, in a bid to address the crisis and ensure the smooth movement of supplies amid the ongoing war, UN और टर्की ने इसे negotiate किया था. Black Sea Grain Initiative कहते हैं इसे. This can be a very important topic for the prelims examination. They can ask you the country that have actually part of it. It was an agreement between Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and United Nations, right, after the invasion of Russia and Ukraine. The UN, Russian Federation, Turkey, and Ukraine took hand to deal with the signing ceremony, which was held in Istanbul. The Black Sea Grain Initiative allowed Ukraine to export grain, food, fertilizers, including ammonia, to the world. और कुछ important ports जो हैं रशिया में, जैसे कोर्मोक्स, ओडेसा एंड पिविडने, ये सारे लोकेशंस पे बेसिकली इनको करने की एग्जीक्यूट करने की बात की गई. Ukraine is among the largest exporter of wheat, maize, rapeseed, sunflower seeds, sunflower oil. These are the globally, right? Even India import from this country. Supply chain disruption, this is evident from the fact, and even this was reported in news as such. मैंने इसको discuss भी किया आपके साथ. Ukraine is one of the most world largest country where the grain export and normally contribute to 45 million ton of the grain to the global market everywhere. However, since Russia has invaded Ukraine, export of grain, food, fertilizers, both countries have significantly hit. The disruptions in the supplies resulted in soaring prices and added to the burden that has already existed the food crisis in some countries. Now, about 44% of the shipment, which include corn, wheat, rapeseed, sunflower oil, and others, has reached the high-income countries that include Spain, Netherlands, Italy, and others. And 28% has reached to the lower and middle income countries like Egypt, Iran, Sudan, Kenya, and 27% have reached to the upper middle income countries, that is China, Bulgaria, and other countries. Now, achievement of the deal. इस deal की क्या initiative की क्या benefits रही हैं? The grain initiative has been a rare example for cooperations between the Russians and Ukraine since Russia's invasion in February. It allowed more than 9 million ton of grain and like 397 ships to safely leave the Ukraine ports. And the grain agreement has brought down the food prices about 15%. That was peak in March. Even in India, the inflation was high side. According to the UN Secretary General has urged Russia and Ukraine to renew the deal when it's expire on 19th of November. Now, what next is like the way forward in this context? So, Russia has requested a meeting with the United Nations Security Council to discuss the issues to supply 5 lakh ton of the grain to the poorest countries with free charge for the next 4 months. While the sanctions on Russia does not affect the grain export to the parallel wartime deal, अगर बात करें Russia food and fertilizer shipment की, it has some business which is definitely involved. Ukraine and US and its allies has gained the accusations of Russia that Russia is playing a hunger game. A blame has even been evident from the United States. Developing nations, which has to find the supplies and pay more for the countries such as US, Argentina, and Australia, are something the part of it. Now, moving to the other news, that is early warning system for the entire world, something relevant for General Studies Paper 3 under the subtopic, that is the conservation, environmental pollutions, degradation, and environmental impact assessment. So, taking forward the initiative of India's, that is Coalition's Disaster Resilience Infrastructure, this is a brainchild almost of India. लास्ट ईयर इंडिया ने इसमें अपनी कमिटमेंट दिखाई, उसी चीज़ को आगे बढ़ाते हुए वर्ल्ड मेट्रोलॉजिकल डिपार्टमेंट और ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, यू कैन से World Meteorological Organization, they have recently unveiled a 5-year program to set the early warning system across the country to save life and minimize the destructions that is occurring specifically across the globe due to the growing number of climate disasters. Right? Now, if you talk about infrastructure and capacity building, the program was launched by the United Nations UN Secretary General that envisaged for investment of 3.1 billion between now until 2027. इस टाइम तक 3.1 billion डॉलर की इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात की गई है, which will create an infrastructure and build capacity in the early warning system. As per the WMO statement, the Global Commissions on Adaptations has found spending about 800 million on the early warning system and avoid losses up to 3 to 16 billion every year. Now, nearly half of the countries of the world, most of them have a least developed and small island, do not have an early warning system. मल्टी हजार्ड अर्ली वार्निंग सिस्टम की अगर बात करें जो कि वर्ल्ड मेट्रोलॉजिकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने इन्विसाज की है, दिस इज गोइंग टू बी अ big issue, a focus issue during the COP27 meeting. So multi-hazard warning system kya hai? It's an integral system which allow people to know the hazardous weather or the climate events on their way, and even inform the government, communities, individual to act and even minimize the repercussions. Right? This will call for end-to-end multi-hazardous early warning system, which include risk knowledge, observations, communications, and response. So these are the major component of the early warning system. Now, the early warning system should be people-centric to empower those threatened by the hazardous to act sufficiently and appropriate manner. They should also have partnership with relevant sector. The WMO, that is the World Meteorological Organization, has said that the Global Commission on Adaptations has found the spending of 800 million on early warning system that could avoid the losses up to 3.6 billion every year. Now, there's a coalition for disaster resilience infrastructure. If you're discussing that, this is something very important to discuss, very much relevant for the prelims examination. CDRA is a global partnership with the national government, United Nations agencies, program, multi-development banks, financial mechanism, and private sector and academic research institutions that aims to create the resilience infrastructure system to climate disaster risk, or thereby ensuring a sustainable development. It was launched in 2019 with the United Nations Climate Action in New Delhi, basically New York, right? Just to correct you, this was there in the New York. Now, it is the government of India that is second major global initiative after the International Solar Alliance, which demonstrated India's leadership in the climate change and disaster resilience issues, right? So definitely India has made a proactive role where it has called for an initiative which worked toward disaster resilience issues. Now, if you talk about multi-hazardous warning system, ये किस तरह से काम करती है? There's first, like you can see, the disaster risk knowledge is there, which after the development come for observation, monitoring, analysis, and forecasting. Their operation paths it evolved, which has a early warning, communications, and disseminations. After operations and development, it called for preparation, response, and capabilities. If you are able to make this diagram in mains examination, it will be better for you. You can get an additional marks in the mains. Now, risk, अगर बात करें किस किस चीज़ों पे काम करने की ज़रूरत है, there's a systematic things which need to work upon. First is on the disaster risk knowledge, detection, observation, and monitoring, warning, dissemination, communication, preparation, and response. Right? There's some headings also. You can take the screenshot for better revision. This will help you. Right? Now, moving ahead with the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council call for single GST rate, something important for General Studies Paper 3, that is Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization, resource growth, and development. The Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council, basically the chairman has said that the goods and services tax regime should be ideal with a single tax which should continue across the India. Now the GST rate should be like same for all the progressive rate that is continuing for direct with the indirect taxes. Now he said that doing away with the distinctions between the personal and corporation income tax and scrapping the exemption can lead to tax avoidance strategies, which basically companies and corporate houses are doing. Now GST की अगर बात करें 4 tier structure है इंडिया में. One tier which called for 5%, other is 12%, then 18%, followed by 28% rate, right? So there's special rate for goods, which is precious metal or scalar rates होते हैं. Now the GST has rolled out in 2017. The revenue neutral rate was seen with 15.5%. Now the tight structure of the GST has been debated since its inception, and even the state were asking for the GST cess, which was again long pending. Now finally government post-COVID is looking forward to resolve the issue. GST Council meeting हुई थी. If you remember, I have already discussed this news. So recently the meeting was held which called for the rationalizations of the taxes, right, which was led by the Karnataka Chief Minister. This is the first meeting that was held. The Finance Minister chaired the proceedings of the council and governed for the first time. This is post-COVID. Now plan to merge several taxes. The slabs जो हैं उनको merge करने की बात की गई. The GOM, the group of ministers, they was asked to consider the merger of the several taxes, and the large overhaul has been put up. And for now, the panel has mooted for dropping the exemptions on some items and tweaking the rates of the goods and services playing by inverted duty structure. Now, what Mr. Dibek Devroy has said, he's the chief of PMAC. He said that the tax revenue must climb up to enable the delivery of more public good services. The GST is a phenomenal work in progress, should identify and a single rate. The estimated of 1.5 to 2% GDP gain from the GST hindered the covering of all items in a single rate and drop differentiation between the personal and corporate income tax. So these are the recommendations that directly coming from the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council Chairman. It's an important point. You can take a note of this as well. This will be relevant for the mains examination as such. Now moving to the editorial of the day, India's G20 presidency and the food security, something important for General Studies paper 2 under the subtopic bilateral regional grouping and agreement involving India and affecting India's interest. So what I'm going to discuss under this editorial, first we'll look into the theme, that is G20 and food security, some important declaration like Material declarations, India's food security journey, diversification of agriculture, government measures, 5 action point and the way forward. Now, India is definitely taking G20 presidency as a historic opportunity for India to share the successful journey and moving from the food deficit nations to food supplied nations, addressing the growing challenges of the food security with a resilience and equitable food system. Right? India has always called for an equitable food distribution system. Now, the global and regional food security has been debated upon one of the major priority agenda for the G20 meeting for years and now. The situation has worsened with the growing conflict and spiraling climate crisis that has brought with it drought, floods, cyclone, and economic downturn in the past few years. Now, material declaration, this is again very important for the prelims as such, and even if you can supplement this for the mains answer as well. Now, what it is, in 2021, through the material declaration, G20 members recognize the poverty alleviations, food security and sustainable food system to key. This is something that will be ending the hunger, right, to the larger extent. The material declaration reflect the India's concern for the welfare of small and medium farmers, promoting local food culture and recognizing the agriculture diversity. This declaration also emphasizes keeping international food trade, strengthening the global supply chain, regional and local diversity food and value chain and supply chain, nutritional food while promoting the science-based holistic One Health, One approach. India's food security journey की अगर बात करें, India's journey in the last 50 years provide learning on sustainable growth and food grade improving the food system. One of the India's greatest contributors to equity in the food is National Food Security Act, which anchor for targeted public distribution system, midday meal scheme, integrated child development services. Today, India's food security nets collectively reach over 50 billion people. Now, since independence, India has initiated a policy, land reform, public investment, this is for the public investment, institutional infrastructure, regulatory system, public support, interventions, agri-market and agri-research and extension, right? So this is the India's journey in terms of enhancing the level of food security and calling for an holistic development of the sector. Diversification of agriculture की अगर बात करें, in 1991 and 2015, this period has saw the diversification of agriculture with greater focus on horticulture, dairy, animal husbandry and fishery sector. This continued learning encompasses the element of nutritional health, food security and sustainability. Government की क्या measures रही हैं इस regard में? In the past 3 years, while responding to pandemic, India has set a global example by elevating hungers with Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. Through this mechanism, the purchase of cereal for the farmers were able to provide with a swift and resilient response. COVID-19 के बाद supply chain जो disruptions की problem हुई है उसे सुधारा गया, and even a robust public distribution system has also been built up by the government of India. 5 action plan की अगर बात करें, this must be the focus of G20 summit, which is ongoing, right? So first, to ensure access to safe and nutritional food for all will be the priority. Shift to sustainable consumption pattern, boost nature positive productions, advance equitable livelihood, build resilience to vulnerability, shocks and stress. Way forward, this can how you can conclude your answer in the mains specifically. Over the decades, the government of India has institutionalized buying the grain from the farmers, जहाँ पे MSP दी जाती है, और फूड स्टॉक्स के लिए स्टैटिक रिजर्व रखे गए ताकि जो नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एनएफएस है उसे पूरा किया जा सके. The minimum support price has encouraged the farmer to produce and protect their financial fluctuations and even provide their livelihood options. Now, this has processed the protection of the people, especially for the most vulnerable during the difficult times. There's need for the greater investment in agriculture by the government, and even a public-private partnership will be a game changer in agriculture, food safety nets, and for most poor vulnerable, the ways to for the farmers and diversification of livelihood should be promoted, where government and the private players can play a big role. Now, moving to the MCQ questions of the day. Before I proceed, just to tell you the answers of yesterday questions. For first question, the correct option is C. For second question, the correct option is C. Today's MCQ for practice, आपको बताना है National Monsoon Mission के बारे में. It was launched by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. It aims to develop state-of-art dynamic monsoon prediction system with short, medium, and long-range forecasters. Second question of the day, Amal mission was recently seen in news, was conducted by Iran, UAE, Pakistan, or Sri Lanka. So you have to check for the correct option. This type of question will definitely help you to aid in the prelims examination. This was all about for the daily news and editorial analysis, followed by the MCQ questions. If you have any other concern, you can let me know. I'll be more than happy to assist you. For time being, I'm signing off. Thank you so much for watching this video.